there was another bill, the sick leave bill, that would have required employers to give every member of their, everybody they employ up to 7 days of sick leave a year. Now, you could say, well, gosh, that sounds reasonable. They should be able to have sick leave, whatever. Well, most employers do that anyway. The problem is, why is the state telling an employer they have to do that? The issue to me is much more the state being involved in the employee-employee relationship. There's an awful lot of bills like that. Warren and I both put right-to-work bills in every year. Of course, we have our hearings, and that's it. Nothing else goes with those, and dealing with prevailing wage issues. The one thing I do want to talk about a little bit is the offshore wind bill. This is the bill that we've been fighting for 3 years. Now, I'm not necessarily opposed to offshore wind. I'm opposed to the government subsidizing it and requiring people to purchase it. To me, if somebody wants to work in the marketplace and they can make it work, more power to them. And this is one of the few places where I probably agree with the Washington Post. The Washington Post actually had an editorial opposing the governor's bill this year. And what the Washington Post said was, okay, we have a 20% requirement for renewables. Let all the renewables fight over that 20%. Let the solar, let onshore wind, let offshore wind, let waste to energy, let all of them fight for whoever's going to be able to get that pie. Don't pick the winners and losers. But by doing the offshore wind, we basically have picked that winner, saying that they're entitled to do that. There is some discussion about whether or not that's ever going to happen. I mean, it is a pretty tall thing to do to get this financing for that, so it may never happen. But the thing that I talked about this morning, I know some OP and some other folks were there this morning, Dave. My concern with the offshore wind bill is the way in which they're going to implement it. And when I say that, I mean, right now they're going to go to the Public Service Commission. If you want to do an offshore wind project, you have to present a proposal. And in your proposal, there are 13 criteria. And 2 of the criteria you have to include in your proposal are, 1, that you have an agreement that will provide, that ensure skilled labor will be used. Now, in my lingo, I hear project labor agreement. And as you know, project labor agreements are generally agreements that require union labor on projects. They tried to do that with Woodrow Wilson Bridge a few years ago, as you may recall, but thank goodness we had President Bush in office, and he was able to say, no, I'm not going to give you any funds, federal funds, if you do it that way, so they didn't have to have union labor, and they save a lot of money. But now, if you want to get an offshore wind proposal approved by the Public Service Commission, you have to include in your proposal that you're going to have an agreement that will require skilled labor. You'll also have to include in your criteria that your wages being paid to your employees are consistent with the prevailing wages of Maryland. Now, if you're not familiar with prevailing wage, that's basically the union wage. Now, there's 2 wages. There's competitive wages and there's union wages. And generally, the union wage scale is higher. So now they're going to be telling people, if you want to get an offshore wind project, you're going to have to include your proposal that you're going to be paying consistent with the prevailing wages of Maryland. Now, we already require that in Maryland for contracts that take state money that are over $500,000 projects, and over 50% of the project is paid by the state. We require that now. I think that's crazy. Don't get me wrong. I try to fight that every year, but that's how we do it now. The reason I bring it up to you, and the reason I think it's so important, is that this is the first time I can think of in my memory where we're telling a private company with private money on a private project that they have to use prevailing wage. Think about it. The only connection to the state is that the state regulates it. The state's not building these offshore winds, the private company's building them. It's all a private enterprise. And so what I'm thinking now is, okay, if you work for Verizon, if you work for Comcast, if you're doing a proposal or a building for BG&E or for Constellation or Exelon now, or Pepco or anything else that's regulated, hospitals, anybody that's regulated by the state now, if you take this to the extreme, they can say, okay, we're going to require to tell you how you pay your employees. That is ridiculous. And I think that's another example of the government becoming much more overburdensome on businesses, and which is something that Gail, Warren, and I try to fight all the time. The other issue come from my committee, the labor issue came in front of my committee. The requirement for teachers was that Tiffany talked about. It's funny that we had 2 bills this year like that. We had one that requires all public school teachers to be able to negotiate for a service fee around the state if you don't already have one. But what's interesting, there's also one for higher education. So it passed requiring that there can be a service fee for professors at higher education. If they don't want to be a member of the union, they still have to pay a fee. What I thought was interesting was nobody came to oppose that bill. The University of Maryland system did not oppose that bill. The Maryland the Maryland Boards of Education came out and opposed the public school teacher one, saying it's not fair, we shouldn't make all our teachers pay a union fee if they don't want to. So the Maryland public school districts opposed that bill, which was a good thing. I'm glad they came out. But here you have the University of Maryland system not opposing it. They came to me privately and said, we really don't like it. I said, well, why aren't you opposing it? Oh, well, you know, we don't really want to come in and oppose it because, of course, they're worried the governor's going to get mad. And they get a lot of money from the governor. So I tell you, I voted against that bill over principle, but I felt like, in a sense, telling them, hey, forget it. If you're not going to fight it, why do you want me to fight?
Right.
So anyway, so those bills passed. So we'll see what happens with that. I don't know about the referendum, what you guys decide to do about that. There were a bunch of other things. I'd much rather just pass on. Gail sort of has more knowledge about the budget, and I think that's a huge issue. So let's just go through that, and then more to talk, and we can answer questions.